What if the number on your CPF statement right now is nowhere close to what you'll actually need? Hmm, that's an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? Because most of us don't check that number often. We glance at it once a year, maybe during tax season, feel a small flicker of relief or worry, and move on. But here's the question almost nobody sits with long enough to actually answer. If you stopped working today and only had CPF, could you survive? Not thrive, not travel the world, just survive. Let's actually find out. Picture a typical Singaporean couple, mid-30s, 2 kids, HDB flat and tampons. Combined income around $11,000 a month. On paper, that sounds comfortable, right? They're not struggling. They go for kopi on weekends, they take one overseas trip a year, they're doing everything correctly. Save a bit, invest a bit, contribute faithfully to CPF every single month because, well, it's automatic, it just happens. And that's exactly the problem, because CPF is designed as a foundation, not a finish line. But somewhere along the way, a lot of us started treating it like the whole plan. So here's the big idea we're going to sit with today. CPF alone was never built to fully fund the retirement most people picture for themselves. It was built to prevent poverty in old age. Those are two very different goals, and confusing them is where things quietly go wrong. Let's put real numbers on this because vague statements don't help anyone. Say you're aiming to retire at 65 with the full retirement sum. Right now, that's a little over $200,000 sitting in your retirement account. Once you hit payout age, that translates to roughly $1,600 a month for life through CPF Life. $1,600 every month for the rest of your life. Now ask yourself honestly, what does your monthly spending actually look like today? Because for a lot of households in Singapore, even a modest lifestyle easily runs $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Groceries, utilities, transport, healthcare, the occasional family dinner. Nothing extravagant, just life. See the gap forming? That gap is the entire story we're exploring today. But here's where most people misunderstand the situation completely. They assume the full retirement sum is the correct target. It's not a target, it's a minimum floor. There's actually a tier above it called the enhanced retirement sum, roughly double the basic amount, which pushes your payout closer to $3,300 a month. That's a very different retirement. So already we've uncovered something important. CPF isn't one fixed outcome, it's a range, and where you land on that range depends almost entirely on decisions you're making right now, today, possibly without even realizing it. Let's talk about why that gap exists in the first place. Think of CPF like a river that's been carefully engineered. It flows steadily, predictably, and it will never dry up. That's the entire brilliance of CPF Life, honestly. Guaranteed income for as long as you live, even if you live to 100. No other financial product in Singapore promises that. But a river only gives you what flows into it. If you contribute the minimum, life gives you the minimum stream. If you top up, use the retirement sum topping up scheme, or benefit from years of steady 4% interest compounding quietly on your special account, that stream widens considerably. And here's the part barely anyone talks about. Most of that widening doesn't come from massive one-time payments. It comes from time. CPF interest compounds, slowly then suddenly. Someone who starts topping up their special account in their late 20s ends up in a completely different position than someone who starts at 45, even if they eventually contribute similar total amounts. Okay, so where does housing fit into all this? Because for most Singaporeans, this is actually the elephant in the room. Using your ordinary account for your HDB flat feels responsible. It reduces your monthly loan burden. It feels like you're being smart with your money. But every dollar that flows into your flat is a dollar that isn't compounding towards your retirement stream. That's not necessarily wrong. Housing stability matters enormously in retirement too. But it's a trade-off, and very few people make that trade-off consciously. They just let it happen. This is the shift. This is where the picture changes. Because surviving retirement on CPF alone isn't really about CPF at all. It's about whether your other pillars are strong enough to close that gap we talked about earlier. And there are really only 3 ways to close it. 1. Reduce future expenses. Fully paid off flat, no debt, a simpler lifestyle by choice rather than necessity. 2. Build a second income stream. Dividend-paying investments, REITs, a small business, part-time consulting, something that keeps generating money even after full-time work stops. 3. Extend your working years slightly, even part-time, even a few hours a week. Just a few more years of contributions can meaningfully shift your retirement account balance because of how compounding works near the end of the curve. Most successful retirees in Singapore aren't relying on one of these. They're quietly using 2 or 3 at once. Here's a version of that couple from earlier, but 10 years later. They didn't change their income dramatically. They didn't take some huge investment risk. They simply made 2 adjustments. They started doing voluntary CPF top-ups in their late 30s, and they paid off their flat 5 years early by making slightly larger payments when bonuses came in. That's it. Small, boring, consistent decisions. By the time they reach 65, their combined CPF life payout sits closer to the enhanced share. Add a paid-off flat, which removes their single largest monthly expense, and suddenly that gap we identified earlier has nearly disappeared. Nothing dramatic happened, no lucky investment, no windfall, just years of small, deliberate choices compounding quietly in the background. So, could you survive retirement on CPF alone? Technically, yes. CPF Life guarantees you will never run out of money, which is more security than most systems in the world offer. But surviving and living the retirement you actually picture for yourself are 2 very different outcomes. And the space between those 2 outcomes isn't decided at 65. It's decided right now. In your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. In the small, unglamorous decisions. An extra top-up here, a slightly faster mortgage payoff there, a habit of investing a little instead of spending it all. The number on your payslip doesn't decide your future. Your habits do. And the best time to start those habits was years ago. The second best time is today.